And then I have a walk-on motion.
Okay.
Yes, go ahead, Commissioner.
Okay. We all know I'm not the most courageous person in the world, but I feel that this has got to come to the board. You've all gotten the letter from Foley-Lardner about their unpaid legal bills. These bills, they provided the detail that we demanded. They've been reviewed by both Gino and, I think, Gabe. And I understand that there were certain things that had to be reduced, but most of the bills were fair and were what we had agreed that we were going to pay. These people are defending Broward Health every day in Broward's courts and maybe even elsewhere, and yet they haven't been paid since June. With that as a background, I would like to make a motion to give Gabe the authority to pay what he and Foley-Lardner negotiate and what he deems fair and supportable. And I'd like to also give him the authority to do that very quickly, because Foley-Lardner's fiscal year ends tomorrow. And the people who have worked on Broward Health's, I mean, the lawyers in the room know, when you, at the end of your fiscal year, when you can't support your salary, it's not a very good time for you. And I don't like to see that as a member of that profession. I'd like to see Foley-Lardner's bills get paid expeditiously. So that's my motion.
Well, just out of curiosity, why haven't they been paid since June? Is there a reason?
I don't know of any reason.
I'll second the motion so we can talk.
Thank you.
So your question is my question as well. When were the bills submitted? Are these part of the October or November bill?
So from my understanding, in July rather, not July, I'm sorry, October. Invoices were submitted to the covered June. I'm not positive about June, but definitely July, August, and September. 3 months. At that point in time, the general counsel was separated, and the whole process came to a little bit of a halt while we reviewed everything. From that point in time, we moved into November, so Gabe and I worked on figuring out how were we going to ensure that we were following the proper processes that we were trying to maintain for the rest of the organization. But what I mean by that is ensuring that the engagement letters went through the same Compliance 360 process that every other engagement has to go through, and also identifying what was the authority in terms of budget, et cetera. Second component of that, once we did that, and that took a while, by the way, because we had to get all of our firms to submit conflict of interest forms, financial disclosure forms. It was a little bit of a lengthy process, but the second piece of that was asking for some level of a standardized approach to details on the invoices, which Gabe helped, met with all the firms, explained what details they were requiring, and by that time, we're talking maybe that was a couple of months, those invoices all started coming in from every firm. So we had discovered at that point, while invoices were being reviewed, that we needed to obviously make payment, close this out, and for what's appropriate, and move on. At that point in time is when I realized, while I was reviewing the financials, that the dollar amount that was in total for the general counsel department, we had exceeded our yearly budget in the first 6 months, which then creates a problem because as the CEO of the organization, I only have authority to either approve things that are budgeted or up something that's not budgeted up to $250,000, assuming it goes through the appropriate procurement process. So that's when I realized, in addition to everything else, I would then need to come to the board to get approval. And here we are.
What's the total for July, August, and September?
I don't know the exact amount. I know the total all the way to date. Do you have that handy, Gabe?
To date,
1.5, 1.4?
well, if somebody wants to calculate, I'll give you June.
have a new CFO, he's
No,
ready.
you can't use a calculator.
Just, I mean, why?
Ready, Alex?
Gabe, before you get in, why, just out of curiosity, am I to assume that only Foley-Lardner is the only firm that hasn't been paid?
No, actually,
Because I'm trying to understand why we would only be addressing Foley.
I think that's just because that was the letter came from that firm, but all of the firms, and I will say with the exception of Nelson, Braun, and Cassell, specifically because I put them through, since I engaged them, I put them through the ringer of Compliance 360, and I capped them up to my authority, which is the only reason they got paid. The rest of the firms going through this process are in the same boat.
Have you reviewed?
There's only
McGuire,
We were told 3
two,
at the last
one,
meeting, if I
two,
remember
don't remember.
correctly.
three.
We were told McGuire Woods,
4.
which you were negotiating. Have you
Yeah.
reviewed Foley-Lardner?
Yeah, I have it in my office. I reviewed it.
And
Pending
and
sign
you-
off on board
it-
approval.
Okay, here's my thought, okay? We have vendors that work for us, okay? My husband owns a small business. We have 30-day terms, okay? I'm embarrassed that we are 6 months out from paying somebody that works for us on a regular basis. I think that it sends a message to vendors, whether it be a vendor, an attorney firm, whatever it might be, that we don't pay our bills. And I don't ever want, and I know that there's some stuff that happened this year, so I get that. But I don't ever want that to happen. So I want to make sure that we clean up whatever we can tonight, get it taken care of. Who is the other firm that's not been paid other than, we know that we have the one that we're dealing with that we have asked you to negotiate?
Yeah.
Before he answers that, I think there's a relevant piece of information here, and that's the delay in the billing that occurred by Foley and Lardner. So you may be embarrassed that we're not paying our bills. They submitted their bills 4 to 6 months late after the work was allegedly provided. So that's an important point.
So that's my issue. In my company, if somebody has 30-day terms. If they don't bill me for 6 months, don't call me and say pay in 30 days. If you don't bill me in 6 months, or even tell me that I should accrue that much, we've been, I don't want to say overcharged, but we went over our budget. If we were accruing that every month, we wouldn't have just figured that out in November. And I get it. I get that there's 3
But did
firms
we
that
talk to
calculate.
them? Did we sit down and say,
That's my point.
I mean, you know what,
Who
guys?
told them that they had to submit in 30 days? I suspect it's no one.
And
I
I'm
think it's
not,
in their
I'm not
agenda.
defending them, I'm just saying, I think, and I'm not trying to say we're trying to avoid paying bills, okay? I understand your point, I think it's a point well taken. I think we need to communicate with our, and we'll call them a vendor, because we've actually asked them to go through the same contracting as others, instead of just an engagement letter, I think now, maybe that's the wrong terminology. But I think we should pay them.
Along those same lines, even if they did not submit, I'm hearing that there are 2 others that we haven't paid. Are they outside of the 30 days? And where?
so I was going to answer that. So
You know,
so the majority, I don't have a reason for this, to be honest with you. I'm sorry, I just don't know. But when we started, Jerry and I, before Gabe got here, started contacting all of the firms we thought we were doing business with, we asked them, please submit all your invoices. There were multiple firms that were submitting invoices that were near 6 months old. I don't know what the reason for that is. I wish I could tell you. I don't know.
Well, I think that we, as a board, need to address that and make sure that that doesn't happen going forward.
Oh,
I mean, that's a problem.
And Commissioner Ranger, just to that point, I don't remember if you, when did you start? Were you here after?
October.
Okay.
My first meeting was
Was the 31st?
Was the meeting from the never-ending
I
pit.
think in that board meeting, in one of those resolutions that talks about the policies, there is something on record that I could probably help out with that talks about that we would not be paying legal fees moving forward if they were more than 60 days in
60
arrear,
days,
if I recall
I think
correctly.
that might have been November.
Yeah,
And I just, if that's the case, I want to make sure that that's been communicated to anybody that was signed prior to that, because I think that it's important that we do that.
On the go forward stuff.
Right.
Right.
On the go, well, and let them know you have X amount of time to submit the historic bills too, you know.
What I'll tell you is from my read of the engagement letters, and they were really just the kind of first letter you get, we did not do ourselves any favors in how those were written. we didn't give them timeframes. We didn't do what we should have done on our side. On the other hand, I don't know anybody who can afford to hold on to bills for 6 months and then submit them and expect to be paid in 30 days. What I had done when I had this problem in my company a few years ago, if they submitted in 45 days, I paid them in 45 days. If they submitted in 30, we had terms. We had them drawn out. I know we don't want to do that here, and I know we want to clean this up, but we're talking about $3 million between two firms. So what's the third firm?
Well, there's McGuire Woods,
So it's
which,
$1.5 million.
Which you're working on.
but that, I'm in discussions with them that include some substantive issues too. Then there's Buchanan Ingersoll
Epstein.
and Epstein, which is an
Minimal.
amount pending under $3,000. So,
That's their total.
And what's Buchanan Ingersoll, do you know?
yeah, that's a good question.
Close to
They're
half a
mainly,
million,
they're
maybe.
they're
think it's
involved
under
with
100.
Broward Health, the
Oh, it's under 100?
entity.
Yeah,
Right.
I think it's under 100.
You think it's
Just don't
under
have it
100?
off the top of my head.
Well,
And
look,
really-
I mean, let me just say that if we entered into an agreement that for whatever reason had a lot of missing details that should inure to our benefit, that's not Foley's fault or McGuire Wood's fault or anybody else's fault. And so work is performed, they need to get paid, okay? And we can all be disappointed in how we got to this point, and but that's not necessarily, their fault. So I personally think they should get paid, and I'm just going to assume that we're only paying for services that were provided and that we've been adequately informed, and invoices are up to snuff and all that. I'm not really going to get into those weeds. To be honest, I'm just going to rely on staff to have done that.
And their work has never been questioned or challenged. Some of their bills, said, you're not going to get paid, but the quality of their work and their commitment, is that funny?
It is to me. I think their work has been challenged, and I think it's worthy of being challenged. Foley-Lardner did not act in the best interest of its client, this district. So I do think that their work, they have some nerve, frankly, sending the letter that they sent, insisting on payment after the way they've performed this year.
Bill Davis defending us, his work didn't qualify to be paid?
I don't know. I haven't reviewed Bill Davis's work. I don't know what he's done, but I know that, we are, to the extent we have compliance issues, our outside counsel was supposed to be giving us compliance advice, and they didn't catch these issues. To the extent they were acting adverse to the interests of the district in a blatant fashion, I think that's all there. So maybe there's some work that they did which was legitimate, representing the district in litigation, for example. We did authorize the filing of some activity recently in a civil litigation, but that's a small component of the work that we've been billed for. We've been billed $161,000 for an invoice that had 4 words on it, attend to legal matters. $161,000, I believe it was, and 0 support.
I believe that was before the detailed billing that we now have.
That's correct, and I'll read you some other detailed billing. Review documents, July 31st, 2018, 6.4 hours. Review documents. Attend to document review, July 27th, 3.7 hours. Attend to document review, 2 hours. Attend to regulatory question, 1 hour. Here's an interesting one, July 26th. Calls with counsel, call with client, attend board meeting, no charge, 6.5 hours. Now, how do you get 6.5 hours for a call with counsel and a call with a client? Because you're not charging for that board meeting, apparently, so how do you get 6.5 hours out of that? So that's just some examples right there off the bat where the billing's just not supported.
So may I ask a question?
So there's a
Just-
lot of questions surrounding this.
I'm just hearing this, right? So I saw the letter, I read it, and I go on record as saying if work was attended to, then it should be paid. However, why is it that these are just being brought up now? Those are June and July that you've said. If someone has not been performing from June and July, 6 months later into January, Chair, I'm asking, why is it now coming to the table? Back in August meeting, September meeting, October meeting, these should have been discussed and saying that we're not being represented
Well,
based
We
on the
didn't receive-
information.
I share your view there, but in fairness to Chairman Klein and everyone else who was here,
And I wasn't.
I
saying,
understand
yes.
that. That's why I phrased it that way.
Thank you.
That level of information never made it to this board, even when asked. That's my experience. That being said, I think, this is a little bit of a quandary because I want this organization to move forward, okay? I don't know what the number is that's the right number, okay? I'm just not gonna get in the weeds there, I don't know. But to hold up any payment at all, I don't know, I just can't be supportive of that. I think there's some number that needs to be paid. And if we're gonna haggle about stuff, or maybe Gabe can give us an update of how we got to the point where we are, have we negotiated bills and there were appropriate reductions? I don't know. Can you get us to
The
where
letter
we're
said
at
there was
today?
Well, let me answer Commissioner Wah's question first. You asked why this hasn't come up before. The July work wasn't billed until November 14th. The June work was billed the June work was on an invoice dated November 14th. So June, November 14th, July, December 7th, August, December 27th, and October, January 9th. So that's when
Those
these
revised
invoices,
bills, or were those the original?
as far as I know, those were the original bills.
I'd be curious to know whether, because I know that you had said that there were some bills without details, so if those
These are the original bills. I have them right here. Here's the July 18th bill. And it was billed December 7th. So I've asked for some of these bills because I was curious as to what all these amounts were that we are being billed. Because we're over budget. We found out last week at last week's legal committee meeting that we're millions of dollars over budget for this year. And this is not a timely discussion because we don't even know where we are on this budget, why we're so far over budget, why we weren't billed by these vendors in a timely fashion, or who authorized this work. We just got an invoice from another vendor for in excess of $100,000 for work in January, late December and January, which we didn't even know they were doing. So the question is, who's watching the shop here? There was work being done for months and months and months with no oversight. This board didn't get that information. I mean, Vice Chairman Uri is absolutely correct. We were asking for information since I've been on this board about what our legal spend is, who's doing it, and why it's so much, and we never got those answers. We finally started getting some answers in September and October of this year, and that raised a lot of red flags. So this is a discussion we need to continue to have as this board because we are spending millions and millions of dollars in outrageous fees. The rates that we're being charged by Foley-Lardner, for example, $765 an hour, $720 an hour, $690 an hour. I mean, so to me, there's a lot of questions surrounding these invoices, and I think we as a board need to decide whether we're going to be responsible and accountable to our taxpayers and to everyone else for
Gabe,
overseeing legal spend.
Gabe, do you have
there's a lot
a
of
total
questions here.
on what you felt was fair and reasonable?
Well, yeah, first of all, I didn't come into this until November, so
Right.
A lot of this is historical. I have had discussions with Representatives Foley to compromise the past bills
Okay.
to some amount, and they've been cooperative in that regard and have proposed something. But, if you're considering the issues that Chairman Klein are bringing up, that probably isn't accommodated by, the compromise discussions that I've had.
Do we have any factual numbers associated with what you're
Well,
discussing?
the outstanding, the pending amount is 1.4 million plus in fees from June through December,
And that
pending.
is the post-negotiated amount?
No, that's
the total amount.
before.
That's total amount.
Okay, so what was the amount that they accepted? I'm assuming it's less than 1.4 million.
Yeah,
So what is that number?
7% discount.
7%.
Yeah, which is, I
Like
think,
100,
amounts
just
to
over, under
$100,000.
100,000, like 97.
Okay,
That was their proposal.
Right.
We didn't say, oh, okay.
Chairman Klein,
Well,
what would
wait.
you?
Sorry, no, I just wanted to say, and I totally share your frustrations, okay? But I think part of the board's actions, without getting into any specific ones, was to take back that control and demonstrate to the public that we are serious about our oversight. How we got to this point is unfortunate, but I don't feel like it's necessarily fair to hold a vendor or a law firm hostage for that reason. That being said, I think some meaningful authorization should happen today, and whether that's 70% of their build rate or 80% or whatever, and then we can figure out from there. I don't know, but to hold it entirely hostage, I just don't think is fair.
The other thing that I would add is I know that they are doing some litigation work for us. Do we have a contracted rate? Because what I'd like to do is make sure that we know that if they're going to bill us for 10 hours, we know it's going to be X amount of dollars, and we're aware of it, and we say, that's what we're doing. So as we go forward, whether it be Foley-Lardner or anybody else, I think we should know what we're going to be billed for what they're doing. So if you're offering a settlement, if that's where you go, I'd like to know, because they are representing us in the one case that we met in the shade for last month.
Yes.
I want to know where we're going with that.
I've had discussions with not only the pending bills, but what rates would be applied going forward.
Okay, good.
So I get the.
Which, by the way, is something that we're trying to implement for all outside counsel.
And I appreciate that. I think that we need to do that.
So from my first meeting here, I asked for legal bills, didn't get them. I don't blame Foley, I don't blame McGuire Woods, I blame our own legal counsel and our own ability not to force the issue with our own legal counsel. That was a mistake.
They were instructed, just to support you, the outside legal counsel were instructed not to give detail on their billing. And that's why we didn't get it.
Right.
Who are they instructed by?
By our
former GC.
ex-general counsel.
I'd heard that as well. So what I'd like to do, because my initial reaction is to vote no, but what I would like to propose is that we essentially pay half of it by tomorrow, which is the end of the month issue, and the rest we leave to Gabe to figure out what's legit and what's not. The numbers you're reading I haven't seen. Those bother me even more. But I can't imagine that it's going to be less than half, no matter what we do. So at least that's a starting point, and giving Gabe the authority with Gino to kind of go through and beat that bill up the way you did. Gabe's got an employee in his firm, Peter Goldman, and he's got other Peter Goldman types that do this type of review of bills. He's done it for me in the past, Peter Goldman has, when he wasn't with Gabe's firm. He's fantastic. He's recognized. Let him look at that. He'd pick up the same things you're doing, him or somebody like him within the organization, and let them do that, but at least get half of it out so that there's an accommodation and it meets some of their needs, because they did do work. I met with them a bunch of times. I know they did work. Some of those bills sound really screwy to me. Those rates sound nuts to me. But listen, I'm not a lawyer, and I think we have to do something to kind of move this along, put this behind us. But whatever Gabe does on the second part of it should be done in short order, so that by the end of February, we're done with everybody. We pay off whoever we need to pay, and we move forward. The board has to authorize, I believe, we need a motion to authorize going over budget. That's the first step before we even do this. We first need to adjust our budget, which you're going to need to tell us, what does that total spend mean?
Going over budget, as well as, because remember, the legal budget was budgeted by vendor. So what I really need is approval to go A, over budget, And B, approval to go over $250,000 for firms that weren't budgeted at all, if such may be the case.
So was Foley
But
budgeted?
Foley was budgeted.
Okay.
McGuire Woods was not, and it's
Okay.
it's traumatic, the amount of
I
money in 2
know,
months.
I know.
So that my thing is to let the professionals, Gabe, I think the chair and I think legal and the attorneys on the board should participate in that. I'm going to be useless. I
Me
see
too.
bills and I hate attorney bills. I hate to get into litigation because it just costs money. No offense to the attorneys in the audience. I'd like to not spend any money on legal fees. I know that's not practical, but I do think we need to move the ball forward. And I think maybe the proposal of, I mean, I guess it'd have to be a three-pronged proposal. One, to approve the budget, going over budget. Two, to approve to settle with accounts where you had no budget. And three, to at least make a half payment accommodation of Foley to get them going. I would not do the same thing with McGuire Woods. You guys need to work that a little bit more, but I would do that with Foley.
I don't know that we need to get into the budget and all that stuff at this precise moment. We can authorize an individual payment.
I think we have to agree to amend the budget, don't we? Can you object?
But authorizing an individual payment is effectively
Yeah,
authorizing.
it'll do the same thing.
Okay.
And just for clarity, is
So
are
that's
you?
my recommendation. If somebody else has a different one, I'm not putting that in the form of the motion, I'm putting that in a way to discuss.
So
I have a
will
real
with-
concern, we just adopted a board policy where we're supposed to be getting information in advance before making decisions. Last week, there was a discussion about how far over budget we are on legal. We were going to get some further information on that. Our outside counsel should know what our process is and what is appropriate to bring before this board. They sent a letter, I think it was last night, by email, asking us to take some action. And we're now going to consider taking action where it's over budget and hasn't been evaluated at all. We don't have the information as a board to act in our fiduciary duty to approve anything. We just don't have the information. You've all just said you haven't seen the bills, you haven't seen the budget number. We don't know where we stand with regard to our annual budget spend on legal. So I don't see how this board could responsibly take any action right now. And frankly, the audit department has already done an evaluation of legal spend, and I think each of the board members should be provided with that, because I understand there's an internal audit report that's done which looks at legal spend and legal bills, and in particular some of these bills. I think it's quite interesting reading. So I think everyone should be provided with that, and then any decision after that should follow.
I will withdraw my original motion and adopt Commissioner Barry's suggestion as a motion that we authorize $750,000 and negotiate the rest with it being brought back to the board for approval.
I guess, do I have to make the second?
I think,
Because I did the original, I'll second it.
I think though, with just in terms of rules of order, I think that since there was a motion and a second, I think there needs to be a vote to not.
I withdrew my motion.
No, I know, but once there's a second, I don't believe you can do that.
Right, unless the second withdraws the second, I believe.
I can
Oh,
withdraw the second.
Okay. I'm not a Robert's Rules of Order expert.
All right, so the original motion was withdrawn, the second was withdrawn, so that motion is off the table. The new motion is to authorize payment.
Of $750,000, which is roughly one half the amount they have billed within their fiscal year, with payment made within their fiscal year, and to allow Gabe to negotiate the rest of it and bring it back to the board for approval.
Okay, and that motion was seconded. I have a question on that motion. I have a list of invoices here for this. Actually, some of this goes back to last fiscal year. This is June, July, August, and September, and those invoices total $881,000. So I'm not sure where the $1.4 million figure came from.
That's what.
It's the combination of
Yeah.
those months plus October, November, December, January.
So when were those months billed, those subsequent months? This was through invoices received January 9th. We have invoices that were received after January 9th?
So an additional 500,000 was billed for those months? After, Well, he's got till January 9th, that's not everything.
Gabe, do you have the invoices?
They're in my office.
I think-
I don't think there were invoices after January 9th.
No, I know, but
Jerry, do you,
We received, I believe it was October, November, December, sometime last week. And that's how we got to the total of 1.4.
yeah, that's right, we had 881 and then, right.
So are we sure of the 1.4 number?
Yeah,
Yes.
that's pretty.
yes,
solid, yeah.
we're sure. Well, I'm sure that's what we've been invoiced, to answer your question, yes.
Okay, so in fiscal year 2018, Foley-Lardner billed us 3.1 or $3 million, $3 million. In fiscal year 2017, they billed us $2 million. So somewhere in this $3 million for 2018 is part of the money you're talking about.
About 800 and some $1,000, yes.
Okay, so.
Do you have paperwork that we don't have?
Probably.
Why?
I don't know.
I don't know either. Because
Probably-
everybody on the commission ought to have all the paperwork, shouldn't we? Do we have to ask for it?
Probably.
I've
That
asked for it.
concerns me. Shouldn't have to ask for it.
So I'm looking at,
What's he reading?
the internal audit report.
This is exactly what the legal committee should be getting. I've asked for it, and I've gotten some data, and this is
But
what needs
I've
to come
been at
before
the legal
committee.
committee meetings since October. I've been in the October one, I was in the November one, I was in the December one. Just because I can't vote doesn't mean that we shouldn't get it. We asked for the billing for this.
I've
You know,
asked-
I'm not mad at anybody, but let's make sure that we're all equals on this platform.
I've asked in the past that anything anyone get, I get also, and it hasn't happened.
Yeah, that's what Nigel handed out to.
He
Commissioner.
handed that out last week during
what I thought.
our audit committee.
Right.
So that was handed out to everybody. I personally have not read it.
I got the binder, but I don't believe I got this.
That was not in the binder. I have the binder, so I don't have a copy.
That's when I got it, so I don't.
That was a handout in the meeting, you're saying?
Yeah, that's my recollection. I personally haven't read it, but that, just in fairness to
Patty,
everybody.
can you make sure that I get a copy of that tonight electronically?
Ditto as well?
They gave it to everybody.
Thank you.
So anyway, if you look at what I'm just basically trying to guess here, that is what we're seeing. I don't think there's a problem with the well, I think there's a problem with the 1.4 million in total, but that's the number. It's not 800,000. We're paying 750 of that, if that's what the question was. I think they say it's 1.4 million. What did their demand letter say? Because
think there was a
0.39.
number.
I don't have that. What does the demand letter say?
That was
Anything?
emailed.
I have it, hold on.
It wasn't in
It
there?
was 1.3 something.
1.39.
Yeah, that's,
In the demand letter.
Well, Foley and Lardner is here. I mean, they've been sitting here the whole time. I mean, why don't they come up and defend their billing? I mean, you've attended all these meetings, apparently charging us for months and months now, if not years.
Through the chair, Mr. Klein, I'm Kevin Hyde. I'm the managing partner of the Jacksonville office, one of the Foley partners who are here tonight, and I'm not charging you. I happen to be in the area, knew this subject matter would come up, so I thought it was important we attend. We have
I'm sorry, you're the
provided
managing partner of which office?
the Jacksonville office.
Jacksonville?
And I have done work for Broward Health as well, so that's my familiarity with it. We, to my knowledge, have supplied all of the information which has been requested, including the additional full detail bills which occurred, as I understand it, after Ms. Barrett was no longer the general counsel. And so we are happy to answer any questions about that. We have made a proposal for a discount off the bill, and that's certainly something that we have talked to the administration about. And I understand the concerns. I understand are a lawyer, sir, and have in the business, as are we.
Yes.
And so we are happy to answer any questions. I haven't heard any discussions about the quality of work which is being done. I understand you raised some concerns, perhaps, but we're happy to answer any concerns. We have made a request for payment. We do have a fiscal year end, which occurs tomorrow. This issue did not just arise yesterday. There has been discussion about, after the bills were submitted, about trying to receive payment before the end of our fiscal year. So I'm happy to answer any questions the commission might have about it. We are here requesting payment for the work which has been performed.
Let me ask you a question, Mr. Hyde. We had a board meeting September 26th, and during that board meeting, one of your attorneys said to another attorney that she considers herself now at war with the chairman of the board. Were you aware of that?
No, sir, I have no knowledge of that. I was not at that meeting.
Okay. I mean, assuming the board is the client of Foley-Lardner as part of the North Broward Hospital District, wouldn't that be an inappropriate statement on conflict of interest?
Mr. Chairman, I'm not going to comment on something I don't have knowledge of.
Well, perhaps you could ask your colleague if she used the word at war or war with the chairman during that meeting.
You're free to ask her that question. I don't believe that we are...
Okay, I will. Ms. Risen, did you use that term during that meeting on September 26th? You did not. In a conversation with Mr. Butterworth and Mr. Diner? Okay, well, next time we'll put you under oath. Would you like to go under oath now? Do we have the authority to put someone under oath, Mr. General Counsel?
Let's back up a
Can we
minute.
swear in a
Yeah, let's
witness?
stop.
Chairman Klein, let's back
Let's
up a minute.
stop.
Sir,
But it
I'm sorry,
creates,
what-
but seriously, as an attorney, it creates a conflict of interest. If you cannot represent your client because you have a conflict of interest, you must withdraw. And that is a basic fundamental ethical obligation of any counsel.
But, Mr. Chairman, you're assuming a conflict of which I have no knowledge. I agree with your proposition, but I have no facts to support that that has occurred. We, and I believe I am speaking for all of my partners, have represented this institution in good faith and to the best of our ability and with your best interest in mind.
Okay, and that's what we're going to need to determine, whether Foley-Lardner did represent the best interests of the North Broward Hospital District or acted at times inconsistent or adverse to the interests of the North Broward Hospital District. So, I think that at the end of the day, whether we work out this invoice in some reasonable fashion or whether this has to go to fee arbitration or something else, I think that's what has to be determined. But this is the first time you've been here and presented any, at all, with regard to the work that you've performed. Have you reviewed the invoices that Foley-Lardner has submitted to this district?
I have reviewed the invoices where I was involved.
Okay, but you haven't reviewed all of them.
No, sir.
So you can't say whether you think that the level of detail provided was satisfactory or not in each and every narrative.
Having not reviewed the bills personally, I cannot. I'm aware of our firm's billing practices. I'm familiar with the attorneys who have been engaged by Broward Health in providing services, and I have full confidence in them.
So if you sent out a bill for $161,000 and the only thing it said on there was attend to legal matters, would you consider that consistent with Foley's billing practices?
Depending on what the request was from the client as to the level of billing.
So where would that request be memorialized typically?
It could be in the engagement letter. It could be in conversations with the client.
So a verbal request from your client, and you would just send out a bill to that, with that level of detail?
If we receive that request from the client, yes.
Okay, and have you received that request?
I have not personally.
So you don't know whether you have or you're not, you didn't?
I'm answering with my personal knowledge, sir.
Okay. And with regard to some of the, a 6.4-hour entry for review documents, is that an adequate level of detail in your opinion?
Depending on the work that was done. You're asking me about a specific time entry that I am not personally familiar with.
What are your initials on your bills?
KEH?
I'm sorry?
KEH.
What type of work did you perform for the district?
Primarily public records review.
So if you were to do a public record review and you spent 6.4 hours, would you put down 6.4 hours and review documents?
I would probably say review documents produced by client for exemptions under Chapter 119 and other applicable exemptions, words to that effect. Oftentimes in litigation billing, it is very difficult to put down exactly which documents were reviewed when you're talking about numerous pages of documents.
What about 5 hours attend to document review?
Is it one of my entries?
No.
Again, sir, you're asking me about specific entrants on bills that I am personally unfamiliar with. I'm happy to sit down with with your interim general counsel or whoever you would designate to do that, as I think that we have done when we receive the additional requests for information.
Sir, Chairman Klein, if you don't mind, if I could intervene here. You said you're the managing partner.
Of the Jacksonville office, yes, sir.
Who has authority down here under this agreement? Who is the ultimate decision maker in your organization for Broward Health?
The billing partner, as well as, which in this case would be Mila Risen, in addition to, she would work with her office managing partner, Leslie Smith.
Would you, if we could move forward on my proposal, because I believe that's the motion that we have on the floor that this discussion is around, would you be willing to sit down with the chairman and the legal counsel?
Absolutely.
And go through the bills in detail, because I'm not sure that we're going to get very far doing it this way, and allow him the opportunity to tell you, because I think there was some, you said there's no dissatisfaction. I think there was some dissatisfaction.
That's fine.
From me, from him, maybe from others, to the degree that it would cost you $500,000, $1 million. I don't know. I don't think so. But I think that the proposal that I have on the floor is probably one that's a safe bet where we're all going to end up at least at that area. And if you could sit down personally with the chair and with Gabe, I think Chairman Klein can bring his information to you, and that can be the second half of the negotiation.
We are happy at any time to have this discussion.
Chairman Klein, does
Okay.
that suit you?
Yes, absolutely.
So could we please, if we could take a vote on the motion of the $750,000, move on and allow them to do that, I think it was already first and second,
Yes.
so got to move the question. Chairman Klein.
Well, I have further comments on the motion, on the motion that's on the
Okay.
table, and I would propose that the motion be modified to reflect the invoices that were received prior to January 9th. I haven't seen any of those invoices. No one here has seen any of those invoices. And that amount was $881,000. And to me, I would expect that, I don't think any firm would expect their bill to be paid within 20 days. So anything received within the last 20 days, I don't think there'd be any reasonable expectation of payment. So I would suggest that the motion be modified to reflect half of the $881,000 rather than this illusory $1.4 million, which none of us seem to have any support for.
And is that request to me, so that's my prerogative?
Yes, that would be my suggestion.
Yeah. And
Is a-
I love you, but I'm not going to do it.
Okay, so the motion's been made and seconded. Is there further discussion on the motion by any of the commissioners? Okay, if not, I'm going to ask for a roll call vote, please.
Chairman Klein,
No.
Commissioner Uri,
Yes.
Commissioner Barry,
Yes.
Commissioner Gregoire,
Yes.
Commissioner Ainger,
Yes.
Commissioner Waugh.
Okay. That concludes that item. I would just note it's interesting voting on things without information, whereas people voted against things based on a lack of information previously. But I thank you for addressing the questions here. I think this was a very bad precedent for this board to set. But nonetheless, we'll proceed and we'll have that discussion concerning legal services and billing practices.